Hey everyone, CJF Hotshot here, and welcome back to the Flash Major Story Arc tier list. This is part 3 out of 4. That's right, we're over halfway done now, so we'll just keep rolling in. Last time we ended off with the Flash, the fastest man alive, and today we're kicking off with the Flash Wild Wests. Flash Wild Wests is at pretty much the top of good tier. It was written by Mark Waid, who returned to the Flash briefly because, well, DC editorial were struggling what to do with the Flash after they kind of did a kamikaze attempt with Bart Allen. So they brought Wally back, and even though it wasn't critically acclaimed, I still like it. It has all the great trappings of the Waid era. Daniel Acuña's art, even though it is hyper-realistic, which is something I normally don't like, it just about works here. And then we switch to Freddie Williams II anyway, who, whilst isn't as good at this point in the book, it will serve great later in the next arc. What you see with Wild Wests is a story that's told across generations of the Flashes, which is exactly what the Mark Waid did in his first ever Flash special back in 1990, when William Messner Loebs was still on the book. So yeah, Flash Wild West is an inherently good story. It just so happens that it was in an era where the Flash was kind of criticized for existing. Next story we're going to talk about is The Flash Fast Money, which is literally in the same place as Wild West. Even though it's a different writer, Tom Payer, because Waid quickly left the book after his arc, Tom Payer writing Fast Money really feels like the culmination of like what a superhero being a dad should be. He's going to be a little impatient. He's going to be a little more on the angry side, but he's always doing it out of love and affection. And everything that this book feels like to me, this is the quintessential Flash story, in the sense of, if you want a Flash story, this is a Flash story. You know what I mean? Like, this has all the trappings that you need to be a successful Flash story. So yeah, read The Flash Wild West and Flash Fast Money. They're both out of print trades, unfortunately, but, you know, it happens sometimes. And Freddie Williams II here on art in Fast Money is brilliant and spectacular. Like, you can't fault him. So, yeah. Next, we have, This Was Your Life, Wally West. If you remember at the end of, part 2, we had a look at a Wally West finale arc known as Last Man Standing. I didn't enjoy Flash Last Man Standing too much, because it felt like an editorial mandate. And whilst This Is Your Life, Wally West is also an editorial mandate, it actually feels like a end of book clip show in a way, but also just a nice thing to wrap everything up into a nice little bow. Like, this ends the book off on a high note. Even though, again, we have a new writer in Alan Burnett and another artist who I can't remember the name of because I don't count them as a main Flash artist, we still see this book end where it should be. Like, Alan Burnett clearly did his research and just like, right, this is what people remember. Wally meeting Linda when he was a human porcupine. We've got Flash Terminal Velocity. We've got the Flash Blitz. Like, he's just bringing everything all together. And I appreciate that as a Flash fan who... And it also has the trappings of most modern Flash stories where it's all Easter eggs. And this is a really underrated story. It doesn't even have a trade, which I think is disgusting, because I think it deserves a trade. So, yeah. Next is The Flash Rebirth 2009. This is a controversial opinion. This book fucking sucks. Alright, number 1, Ethan Van Sciver. I hate Ethan Van Sciver. I'm pretty sure I've, talked about this before. So, yeah, I don't like the artist. I don't like his art or him as a person. So, yeah. And then we've also got, basically invalidating Bart Allen coming back to life. Like, Bart Allen had a heroic sacrifice at the end of Flash Full Throttle. It's just like, oh yeah, Bart's back too. He's de-aged for some reason. Anyway, Barry's back. Barry. And I get that this is coming from a bitter Flash fan. Like, I get that. I 100% know this. But when Barry comes back to an eternal fanfare, and Bart Allen also died as the Flash, it leaves a sour taste in my mouth. So yeah. Also, it's just a bunch of retcons that I don't like. And Barry not even caring about his kids. Like, oh, Iris probably should have told him, oh, yeah, you have kids in the future, Barry. You can probably see this by you having a grandson. But yeah, we have kids. You should probably go there. But no, we don't even try that. So yeah, this book makes me very bitter, so I can't put it anywhere above terrible, purely because of that, because I hate it so much. Luckily, Geoff Johns does start to redeem himself in The Flash Dastardly Death of the Rogues. This takes place just after Blackest Night, into the Brightest Day era. And Dastardly Death of the Rogues is just a quite nice Barry Allen story. Like, this is probably the direction they were willing to take Barry Allen back in 2010 if it weren't for upcoming events. And it is nice to see a Barry Allen story of a semi-Bronze Age Barry in terms of persona, etc., you know? Because we don't really see that. And this is like the only one you see in the modern age, so yeah. So yeah, I put it in good. One that I didn't put in good is The Flash, The Road to Flashpoint. Quite similar to Blitz, it just leads into a bad story that I won't be talking about today because it doesn't count. But The Road to Flashpoint, right, is just made off of a bad premise. I feel like, oh, Bart Allen's a timeline anomaly. Like, if Bart Allen was a timeline anomaly, you'd think that would have been solved by him fucking dying back in Flash Fastest Man Alive. And then he came back to life in Final Crisis. Like, anything that makes him a timeline anomaly now just isn't. Because at that point, if Bart's a timeline anomaly, then so is Barry. So yeah, this is just like quintessential Geoff Johns liking Barry more than any other Flash. And whilst I admit I like Wally more than any other Flash, so I would put Wally at the centre, this feels like disrespect towards Bart, Max, Wally, Jesse, and Jay. Like, even in Flash Rebirth 09, like Jay says, and I know we're backtracking to a story I hate, but like Jay says, Barry Allen made me the Flash. And I'm just like, shut the fuck up, Jay. Shut the fuck up, Jeff. You know? Yeah. So yeah, now we head straight into the New 52, with the Flash moved forward by a new creative team, Francis Manapul and Brian Buccellato. Bear in mind, Francis Manapul and Brian Buccellato were also the colorists, the artists in Francis Manapul's case, and the colorists of this run. They were a two-man team, and somehow they came up with a nice, solid story throughout all of the, like, New 52 editorial mandates. I can't stress this enough. Like, the Flash move forward and the stories that come after this from Manapul and Buccellato are a miracle that they worked in the first place. Alright? Because whilst there is a lot of degree of creative control there in being a writer-artist at the same time and a writer-colorist at the same time, you also have no creative control because DC was just tightening their grip at the time. Like, Manapul wanted to do a Wally West Flash series, and that didn't happen because it was the New 52 and they wanted to do Barry. Yeah, and so what they ended up with was The Flash Move Forward, which is a tremendous arc, I will say. Like, these 8 issues are splendid, in terms of the New 52. Like, these are probably, if you want a New 52 story, unironically, the first volume of New 52 Flash is actually quite solid. So yeah, that's Flash Move Forward. Next, we've got the Flash Rogues Revolution and the Flash Guerrilla Warfare, which are I'm counting as the same story. I know I've separated stories that lead into each other before. Like, I've separated Dead Heat and Race Against Time, and I've separated Chain Lightning and the Dark Flash Saga, but that's because it feels like the midpoint actually is an endpoint, whereas with the Rogues Revolution and Guerrilla Warfare, it doesn't feel like that there's a cutoff point. It just bleeds into itself. So we're counting them as the same arc, and it's okay still. Like, it still follows the same trajectory. It's just that here, we get, more artists, like Marcus Toe, and even Scott Collins coming back for a bit. Because, well, Manapul, as great as he is, can't keep up a schedule of being an artist whilst also being a writer for too long. Like, it's a miracle he did it for over 8 issues. So yeah, he had to have a small break and let Marcus Ho, Scott Collins, and the annual people take over, which is great. Manapul needed that so that he could focus on scripting and taking a break from art and working with Brian Buccellato in meetings. Like, this is me defending this half of the New 52, by the way. I'm unapologetically defending the first half of the New 52. Bear in mind I put like all of the first half in good anyway. And even though it has a forced ship in Barry and Patty, at least it didn't insult us as the reader. Like, yes, Barry and Iris still don't, like, they still get along. They're just not married. And who knows, we might let them marry if Dan DiDio gets off our ass, but for now, Barry has to be with Patty. Tease what you tease. And next we've got the Flash Reverse. I think this is an underrated arc. I like Reverse. I like Daniel West as a villain. I like Daniel West as a Reverse Flash. I like all these like new speedsters that Barry's taken on and then like immediately then being murdered. I know that sounds really weird, but yeah, Francis Manapul and Brian Bruchelot are like properly like structured it well for Reverse, which is why again I've put it in good. It's like the best arc in the New 52. So yeah. And it's Manapul's goodbye to the book. Not Bruchelot's goodbye, but definitely Manapul's goodbye to the book. Where we get this awesome ending page. And yeah, I have a soft spot for this. It's also because like this is like, these are some of the first Flash issues I've ever read were parts of Reverse. So I do feel nostalgia for it. And that makes me biased. But yeah, Manapul and Bruchelot tried really, really, really hard and relatively succeeded. Because Jeff abandoned the Flash book when it was his reboot. So yeah, well, his and Dan's reboot really. Next we got Flash History Lessons, which is still helmed by Brian Bruchelot. So we still get like that same thread of continuation from the Manapul era because it's still the same writer and Brian Bruchelot, but it ends on a cliffhanger that doesn't get resolved. I've put it like at the bottom of good. That doesn't mean it's bad. It just means it leaves a lot to be desired. Like the art side of it isn't really looking too good. It's by Patrick Zercher, who is normally a good artist, but for the Flash is a bit and it's a very filler arc. It leaves itself really unresolved. So yeah, this is the end of me defending the New 52, by the way. Like, I can defend it for the first half because Brian and Francis really do try. And I see them, like, bleeding, saying, please just let us use Wally. Please, let us, like, do good plot lines. And then they came up with good stories anyway, but I can't defend the rest of the New 52 for the Flash. So it is what it is. The next arc is The Flash Out of Time and The Flash Savage World. I'm not even sure if it's called Savage. It's the Future Flash arc. There we go. It's the Future Flash arc. Flash Volume 6 and 7. I hate this arc. I hate this with a passion. Like, first off, it's made by Robert Venditti and Van Jensen, who I love Robert Venditti as a writer, right? Like, if you see me talk about Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps on Twitter, a lot of that is because Robert Venditti just gets Green Lantern. He doesn't get the Flash. Like, some speed scenes are always off tilt. Van Jensen might not be as good as a co-writer, but I'm not too sure. And I don't think they wanted to do the Flash because they wanted to. I think Francis left the book, and then Brian was supposed to continue on, but then got the Detective Comics, he got the Detective Comics gig with Francis, so editorial had to scrap together a new Flash editorial team, like Flash writing team, and they scrambled together Robert and Van Jensen, and they still wanted to write Wally, but DC editorial were just like, no, you can introduce a new character and call him Wally, which pissed off a lot of Flash fans at the time. It turned out well eventually, but at this point in the New 52, who was the guy who would eventually be known as Ace West, wasn't very liked among the Flash fan base, and for good reason, because he was like seen as a replacement for Wally. Now we know that isn't the case, like retroactively, so Ace gets to be his own character. But, like, in these first like few arcs, it feels like DC punching Wally West fans in the guts, and also keeping the retcons that Jeff made for Barry Allen alive. And I don't like that, especially since they're copying Wally's story. Like, they're copying the Dark Flash saga and just making it worse. Like, I put the Dark Flash saga at the top. I've put, like, Out of Time, the Future Flash saga in terrible. And this is also where Barry breaks up with Patty. So yeah, I'm not a fan of this story, nor am I a fan of the Flash Zoom. This is part of like the DCU initiative, and I couldn't care about that. Robert Venditti and Van Jensen legitimately didn't know the difference between Eobard Thawne and Hunter Zolomon. Like, they've said this in interviews before, which is why they called it Zoom, and they always called him Zoom in the book. When it's just like, that's technically right, but really it's Professor Zoom, you know? And yeah, also a weird thing about this run of The Flash, which is also similar with Jeff Johns' second run with Barry, is Barry doesn't have an inner monologue in this book at all, which is really like infuriating, because you think, what is Barry thinking? Oh, we don't know. It's just the same Barry that we always see in the Justice League books, which doesn't really convey itself well because it doesn't feel like Barry in the JL books. So yeah. Yeah, that's my brief rant on the Zoom arc, because I don't like to read it. By the way, I love Brett Booth's art. I love Brett Booth's artwork. That's like the saving grace of these two arcs. A Future Flash arc and Zoom. So yeah. Finally for this video, finally for part 3, we have The Flash, full stop. I put it in lacking. I put Zoom in lacking as well, for anyone wondering. But I put full stop in lacking just because I felt nothing towards it. It's an average The Flash versus Rogue story, and it makes me feel nothing. Robert Venditti, like, left the book, like, before it was even finished. So it was just up to Van Jensen to, like, scramble the pieces all together, and it's kind of infuriating. Luckily, Dan Abnett and the Titans team were looking for a way to reintroduce the Flash, like, reintroduce Wally West into DC Rebirth. And so was Jeff Johns and all these other people at DC. So luckily, this was just a book that like had to come out at the end of the New 52. And we also got the bonus issue, which was like the Flash Rebirth special issue 1, which brought Wally back. Which meant Ace could stand on his own as a character, but really DC didn't really try at that point. But we'll get to that point. Is The Flash full stop it's a very nothing book. Like, the Riddler's the fucking villain, because Van Jensen doesn't know what to do with any Flash villains. So yeah, it's just lackluster. That's all I can say. And that is a very sour note to end this video on. But trust me, when we get to part 4, we will go over all of the Flash books from 2016 till 2022, which will be a doozy, but I'm willing to see it through. Right, goodbye everybody.